The old man walked slowly down the gravel path, his cane gently tapping the damp ground at a steady pace. Each step seemed to weigh under the weight of the years, the memories and the sorrow he carried in silence. The air was thick with heavy humidity, a remnant of rain that had fallen earlier in the morning. The smell of wet earth mingled with that of the cypress trees that lined the cemetery, their dark silhouettes standing like silent guardians of this resting place. The sky was a pale gray, dotted with frayed clouds which let in a few timid rays of sunlight. A light breeze rose at times, lifting the dead leaves that covered the ground and swirling them before they slowly fell. He knew this path by heart. He had walked it so many times that his feet seemed to move there of their own accord, as if guided by an invisible force. For 10 years he had been coming here, always at the same time, always with the same bouquet of white lilies, carefully tied with a pale blue ribbon. These were the favorite flowers of her son, Mark. He still remembered the day he discovered it. One summer afternoon, when Mark was only 12 years old, he had surprised him in the garden admiring these flowers with fascination. "They're beautiful, Dad, they look so pure," he said, touching them with his fingertips. Since then, lilies had become their symbol, a fragile bond between father and son, a silent language that persisted even after death. Mark had left too soon. Much too soon. A brutal accident had killed him in the prime of his life, at the age of 27. A call in the middle of the night. A deep, mechanical voice on the line. A series of words that he had difficulty putting together as his brain refused to accept their meaning. Road accident. Instant death. All our condolences. The emptiness had been immediate, absolute. A hole had opened in him that day, and since then he had tried to survive with this gaping chasm in his chest. Some said that time helped heal, but for him, time only highlighted absence. 10 years later, he still found himself listening, almost expecting to hear Mark's voice echoing somewhere in the house. But only pitiless solitude met his expectations. He continued his progress through the rows of tombs, each bearing a name, a story, a past frozen in stone. He never stopped in front of others. Only a grave mattered to him. But that day, as he approached the grey stone where Mark's name was engraved, something disrupted his routine. An unusual silhouette. A young girl was kneeling in front of her son's grave. Frail and discreet, she wore a dark coat which contrasted with the paleness of her skin. Long brown hair fell over her shoulders, partially obscuring her face. Between her delicate fingers she held a small bouquet of white daisies. The old man instinctively slowed his pace. His breath hitched as he observed the scene. Who was she? He didn't remember ever seeing her. What was she doing here? She seemed absorbed in a silent whisper, her lips moving imperceptibly, as if speaking to the deceased. Her slender fingers gently touched the cold stone, a tender, almost intimate gesture. The old man stopped a few feet away from her, his heart beating slightly faster. He didn't like strangers lingering at his son's grave. For years, he had learned to jealously protect this space, as if he were the only one with the right to watch over Mark's memory. But this girl, there was something different about her. After a few seconds of hesitation, he took a breath and broke the tranquility of the moment. "Who are you?" he asked hoarsely. The girl jumped slightly. She slowly raised her head towards him, revealing a gentle face, still marked by youth, but whose eyes shone with an indecipherable emotion. He read there a contained sadness, a form of respect, and perhaps even gratitude. My name is Elise," she replied softly. The old man frowned. This name meant nothing to him. "Did you know my son?" Elise lowered her head slightly, diverting her gaze for a moment towards the grave. With her fingertips, she caressed the engraved stone, as if searching for the right words. "Not directly, but it changed my life." The old man felt a pang in his heart. "How so?" A silence ensued, dense and full of emotion. Elise took a deep breath before continuing, as if each word weighed with an invisible weight. 17 years ago, your son saved a life, that of my mother." The old man opened his mouth, but no words came out. A slight tremor ran through his hands, while his cane sank imperceptibly into the damp gravel. Elise lowered her eyes, staring at the tombstone with infinite tenderness. My mother was very ill. Her heart was too weak. She didn't have much time left. And then, one day, she received a call. There was a compatible donor. He was your son. A wave of heat followed by dull pain passed through the old man. His breath became shorter. He knew this story. He knew it, but he had never had the strength to fully confront it. When Mark died, plunged into a coma from which he never woke up, doctors asked him this heartbreaking question. Would he agree to donate his son's organs? He remembered feeling a brutal revolt, a visceral refusal at the idea of seeing Mark disappear completely, piece by piece. But beyond the suffering, there had been Mark's voice, resonating in his memory. If one day I can save a life, I want to do it. So he said yes. A yes torn from his own broken heart. And then, he had chosen to never know who this gift had benefited. Too much pain. Too afraid to face what that really meant. Elise raised her eyes, shining with unshed tears. Without him, I would never have been born. A shiver ran through the old man. His vision blurred. Before him stood a young girl, alive, real, with her fragile breath and her eyes full of recognition. A life that Mark had, without knowing it, helped to create. Elise gave a shy smile, a smile full of infinite gratitude. My mother often spoke to me about him, she continued in a soft voice. She said he had a huge heart, literally and figuratively. That he was the type of man who wanted to help others, who could not stand injustice. The old man let out a light laugh, sad and tender at the same time. Yes, it was him. Always ready to defend those who had no voice. Elise nodded, then continued, even more gently, as if she were touching a precious memory. She told me that he dreamed of traveling, of writing, of discovering the world. The old man felt his eyes watering. He blinked several times, as if trying to chase away the emotion that was rising within him. But it was impossible. Each word from Elise awakened a memory, a dream of her son frozen in time. It was true. Mark wanted to see the world. He filled entire notebooks with destinations to explore, with horizons that he hoped to one day take in with his eyes. India and its thousand-year-old temples, Iceland and its northern lights, the cobbled streets of Rome and the skyscrapers of Tokyo. He wrote down everything carefully, drew imaginary maps, traced routes that he would never take. I came here because I wanted to thank him, Elise explained in a breath, as if the words burned her lips. Her voice shook, but she didn't look away. I wanted to tell him that his heart continues to beat. That thanks to him, my mother was able to see me grow, teach me to love, to dream. I wanted him to know that his gesture was not in vain. Silence fell between them again. But this time, it didn't weigh like a lead weight. He was different. Charged with emotions, with mutual understanding, with an invisible connection between past and present. The old man felt his legs trembling. A familiar heaviness weighed on his body, but it wasn't just the fatigue of the years. It was the weight of a mourning that he had always carried alone. Slowly, he knelt before the grave, ignoring the pain in his worn knees. He placed his wrinkled hand on the cold stone, as if he wanted to feel, through the rock, a presence that he missed so much. Mark, my son. His voice cracked. Silent tears rolled down her cheeks, hollowed by time. He had never dared to cry like this, not in front of his son's grave. He had always kept his pain inside him, closed like a book that one refuses to open. But today, something had changed. Elise knelt beside him and gently placed her hand on his arm. He still lives, she whispered with infinite gentleness. The old man looked up at her, and through his sorrow he saw something he had never considered before: continuity. Mark had not only disappeared, he had left a mark. A heartbeat that, somewhere, continued to resonate. A breath which, through this young girl, continued its path. He stood up slowly, with difficulty, but a new strength seemed to inhabit him. The pain of absence was still there, but it was accompanied by something else, a reassurance, a certainty. He looked at Elise and gave her a sad, but sincere smile. "Thank you, young lady. Thank you for coming." She nodded, a slight smile lighting up her face. Then together they remained there in silence, united by the same love, the same sorrow, but also by the same gratitude towards the one who, even in the afterlife, continued to exist through them.